The Masters is underway, and they are playing without the world's number one. And how did that all happen? It was a bizarre story. Gil Capps joins us now to take a look at that from the Golf Channel, NBC Sports Golf, and he joins us now with a look at today's Masters tournament, Gil, which the tournament really got off to a bad start with Dustin Johnson unable to participate.
Mike and Pete, good afternoon. That's quite the segue. Van Halen's journey to the Masters, which isn't the strangest one of the week, considering that Snoop Dogg was in Augusta last night for a concert. So how the world of pop culture melts in this day and age. You're right, a very strange scenario yesterday with Dustin Johnson slipping down stairs at his rental house, falling, injuring his elbow. But the big issue was the left side of his lower back, I guess. He fell and hurt, according to him, and tried to go out there and warm up and just couldn't give it a go today, which is, it's a real shame. I mean, I think you look back over the last 10 years and the argument to be made was that, Dustin Johnson was probably the biggest favorite going into a Masters since, Tiger Woods, back kind of in his heyday 10 years ago or so. So guy had won 3 straight, PGA Tour starts and a U.S. Open last year. He was just on a roll, and so hopefully Dustin will get better soon. And if you would have said at the beginning of the day or before Dustin's injury yesterday, yeah, it's going to be tough conditions yesterday, but there'll be a guy from South Carolina leading, with a 69 in the clubhouse. It wouldn't have surprised you, right? Well, we got a guy leading right now, 69 in the clubhouse in South Carolina, but it's not Dustin Johnson. This guy William McGirt, who's from the upstate of South Carolina, Boiling Springs, and went to Wofford College there in Spartanburg. And he 4 birdies and 1 bogey today around that golf course was mighty, mighty impressive.
Yeah, we'll get into the elements and stuff, Gil Capps, here in just a second. But how much do you think the tournament takes a hit not having Dustin Johnson in there? When you lose the world's number one player, specifically how well he's been playing, do you think the tournament takes a little bit of a hit?
I don't think so. But of course, you got to remember, I'm one of those kind of inside the beltway guys, immersed in golf all the time. And I tend to think this, going to bring him up again, Tiger. I think for certain maybe segment of people, it was a factor. For Tiger, I just don't think Dustin's that big to affect it. But I just think the game, and particularly this is the Masters. It's whoever's in contention on Sunday. It could be guys you really haven't heard of. People are still watching. It's still getting a big rating. And so in this instance, I don't think the tournament really takes a hit in Dustin not being there. I think it's more important just from Dustin's standpoint, because he was playing so well. And you always want to have the number one player in the world. You got the top 60 in the world there, and then you lose the number one guy. But it's a pretty deep field playing this week.
Gil Capps with us. We're talking the Masters, and last year, Gil, Jordan Spieth had trouble at the infamous 12th. Well, this year, it looks like the 15th hole is something that does him in, at least in the first round. Does Jordan Spieth have like a mental block on certain holes at the Masters?
15 is this is Jekyll and Hyde personified at 15, because today 15 historically, and we ran a feature on it on the Golf Channel this week, easiest hole in Masters history. And today it's the opposite. It's dead into the wind. Nobody's going for it in 2. It's brutal. It's playing like 5.3 stroke average, well over par. Jordan's not the only guy who's had issues with that hole today. But all it takes is one, miscalculation. And when he hit that third shot in the water, it does compound things. Then you feel a little pressure, when you take that next shot and take that drop to get it close. And as I remember, I think he hit it a little long and then had problems from there, kind of getting in the hole for that 9. I will say this about Jordan Spieth. When he first came on tour for a while, it would get down toward the end of the tournaments, and he could get frustrated with himself pretty easily. And I think there's still some of that in instances there with him, and that may have been the case on 9 today. When you hit one bad shot, it takes a lot to kind of, okay, calm down, take a deep breath, let me get back into the zone. Forget about everything that's happened, the last shot or the last two shots. Focus on this. Don't even worry about what shot I'm hitting, right? Just worry about concentrating on executing this as best as I can and getting this thing in the hole in as few strokes as possible. And, we're still talking about a guy who's pretty young. Maybe there's still a bit of that to kind of come from Jordan. I'm not, it's hard to get inside a guy's head, right, in any of these situations, but maybe there's a little bit of that still there with him just because we saw it, pretty frequently there, 2013, 2014 there when he was first starting out on tour.
Gil Capps with us, and you hinted at it in that answer there, Gil. With a day full of rain from, at least they closed the course from 2:30 on Tuesday. The par 3 contest, which has never been washed out, was completely washed out yesterday. So a lot of people had this idea that the scores were going to go really low because the greens would be receptive, and yet at one point today, now there are a couple of people at -3 now, Charlie Hoffman and William McGirt, like you said, but at one point they put up that stat where it went 59 years without at least one player with a score in the 60s. It looked like that there might be some history. The course is playing. How is the course playing today, and does that surprise you at how difficult it is for the guys out there?
I'm going to take the opposite. It surprises me how it isn't playing as difficult as maybe I thought it would play, because these winds are forecast. When you see winds of 20 to 25 miles per hour with gusts of 35 on a golf course like Augusta National Golf Club, you just automatically think this is going to be a brutal, brutal day. And it's not right, guys, it's not easy. But I think there are a couple of things that, first of all, it's not really that cold. We've had days at Augusta National where you've had winds like this, and the high hasn't gotten, above 50 barely. And then it is soft. They had an inch and a quarter of rain yesterday. They had rain on Monday. So that makes a big difference when if you hit a good solid shot to the green, and the green's going to be receptive, because, there could be past years, like that brutal Saturday you had 10 years ago when Zach Johnson won, when it was kind of conditions like today, a little cooler, but the course was firm and fast, and the average score is over 77. And today it's just about 75. And that too, I think that in this day and age, I hate to say the governing bodies are kinder and gentler, but they kind of are. When they see conditions like this coming, in the old days it would have been, kind of just you get whatever you get. The players, it's the course is what it is. You go play it. But now they tend to, some of the holes today were a little shorter, the setup a little different to kind of, to take an effect, that wind and the wind direction. And that's a little different from the old school thought. And so I think those are the reasons why you see scores a little better than I would have thought overall. But if you look at the scores, right, they're not tons of 77s and 78s and 79s. You got a lot of guys kind of right there, just a little over par. And even, we talk about Jordan Spieth, 75. I mean, right now he's just 6 shots back, and he's not out of it whatsoever. I mean, Gordon, he would have made par on that hole, right? He's 71 and he's 1 under, and he's right there with a bunch of those other big names, just like Phil Mickelson, who was kind of one of the stories of the day as well, with that 71 at age 46, and really a guy we always talk about, Jack Nicklaus in 1986 and winning that great Masters. And there's one guy who could do something similar. It's Phil Mickelson, in my opinion, and I just don't think this year. I think Phil's going to kind of be a guy who could be a threat to win this Masters for the next 5 or 6 years as well.
Yes, sir. Have to put that in there and do my best Vern impression for you if you're going to bring up that 86 Masters. I know Jack said earlier this week that Phil's playing better than he did when he was at 46, and of course, we all know what Jack did at age 46.
He is. There's no doubt about that. Golf's a different game at this time, though. 30 years later, the equipment's different, the fitness is different. It's when Jack won in 86. He was old. He was an old golfer. I mean, this day and age of 46, you're not an old golfer. You can you can compete, especially in these majors and at a place like Augusta. I mean, Phil has 11 top 5 finishes at Augusta National. That only Jack Nicklaus has more, and so he has the experience to go around there. He knows how to get it done, and if he can also at a place like Augusta National. In a regular tour event, I think Phil almost has to play. Being at age 46, I think it's all these great guys. He has to play almost perfect to win a regular golf tournament. But in my opinion, at Augusta National and the Masters, he doesn't have to play perfect. He can be maybe off in one little area and still compete and still possibly win.
So far, we got William McGirt leading the Masters so far. Hoffman Duffner right behind him there. There's some surprise names at the top. Any of them, in your opinion, Gil, have staying power?
It's hard to say. Golf's a crazy game, a really crazy game. The one thing today, though, you look at the top and you see guys who, if you said, what are their strengths, you would probably say ball striking, right? On a windy day like today, you got to hit the ball solid. You got guys like McGirt and Duffner and Hoffman. These guys are kind of renowned for their ball striking and not so much their putting. I mean, a couple of guys that jump out at me who got up there. One is Justin Rose. I mean, he's at 71. If you ask probably every person in golf, give me the top 5 best swings on tour, and Justin Rose his name's gonna be on every single list. He's really a guy that I would look out for sitting right there. But you guys got a guy too. Ricky Fowler, 73 is right there. Paul Casey, who's played well last year toward the end of the year, 72. So a lot of guys who are still in there. And remember, you can't win on the first round, but you can lose it. And 7 shots is the most anybody's ever come back from to win after 18 holes. And so that right now puts anybody at 76 or better kind of right in that range. And with a packed leaderboard, wind's supposed to be kind of like this tomorrow, and then it's supposed to be beautiful on the weekend. So I think we're in for another fabulous Masters finish.
Let's hope. How about last year's champion Danny Willett? He's hanging in there, so that's a good sign for him to be, in the mix at least on day one.
He's had a tough go over since last year's Masters. A lot of pressure when you're a major champion. I think you feel like you need to be somebody different and a different type of player, and hasn't won. Had some issues at the Ryder Cup with his brother, sending some tweets and writing some articles. And it's hard to defend, right? We've only had three players ever in Masters history win back to back, and those are some names people have heard of: Nicklaus, Woods, and Faldo. But it's nice to see him playing well, and maybe he'll get a spark. And you never know in golf.
Gil Capps with us. Gil, you mentioned how hard it is to win at Augusta. You also mentioned a previous winner in Phil Mickelson. Are there any other previous winners on the course there that you think could make a run, or at least make the cut and then make a run?
Just looking today, obviously Spieth, we talked about. I'm sorry, I don't have a current leaderboard right up in front of me. Here's another guy who's just doesn't. He seems like he shows up all the time at Augusta National on top of that leaderboard, somewhere around there. And that's Fred Couples, with a 73 today. And, if he's in the mood and his back isn't hurting, he may get a break tomorrow. Tomorrow may be the day where the winds kind of do die down a little bit during the day, and he's off in the afternoon. It's the one place where we see a lot of older players, right? Last year we saw Bernhard Langer. We saw him tie for third going into the final round and didn't have a great final round. But we see older players kind of in the same vein I mentioned of Phil Mickelson, guys who knowing that golf course and knowing kind of where to play conservative and where not to play conservative, I think is a big thing to know there. And I think Jack Nicklaus has talked about that. When he played there, the middle of the green, he thought never hurt him. Because if you hit the middle of the green, you have a 20-foot birdie putt, kind of wherever direction you're going. He would take advantage where he thought his power in his game, he could take advantage. Now, that's the thing today. A lot of players, of those kind of players, power players, you have the 3 of the 4 par 5s, 8, 13, and 15, all playing into that win. And I said 15, usually those longer players are eating it up, and today they're not. So that's the thing where those longer hitting players, like a Jason Day who's 74, he's not that far off, can maybe start taking a little more advantage as we go into the weekend. But experience, it does really count there at the Masters. We've, in the history of the event, since the first two playings, we only had one player win in his first appearance, and that was Buzzy Zeller back in 1979. So that makes something that William McGirt does today in his very first Masters, able to shoot 69 in those conditions, even more impressive.
I'm glad you brought Fezzi up. We're talking with Gil Capps. Perhaps no one more qualified to talk about the Masters than Gil Capps. You can find him on Twitter at Gil Capps. He's the author of The Magnificent Masters as well, an excellent read and a great book if you're all fans of Augusta like me. But you talk up first-timers, and John Rahm, a first-timer who's been playing hot golf. Gil, what were your impressions of him coming into the tournament and your impressions now that you've seen a few swings out of the guy? There's a first-timer trying to win at Augusta.
Everybody thinks there are a couple of guys really, I would say in the last 10 years, there are two guys who, when you got a consensus, and like everybody has, right, there's so many good young players. That guy's gonna be great. This guy's gonna be great. There are really two that stand out to me that the consensus was he's got what it takes and he's going to be a star. And that was Jordan Spieth, and that was Jon Rahm. And I think what he has done out there hasn't really surprised any of the insiders. To win out there at San Diego like he did. If he were to win Sunday, it would be a great story and a great accomplishment. And look, if he wins in his first event, it is that. But I don't think it would necessarily be a great shock or surprise to people in the golf world. He has all the tools, and he has that little something, that little spark, right? That little something extra that, is in his eyes and it's in his attitude. And he has a little bit of that Jordan Spieth that we talked about a little bit, that little kind of temper where he kind of gets frustrated at himself, just like Spieth did. And he'll have to kind of learn how to use that to his advantage and his benefit. And that may be something where, it may take, like it did with Jordan Spieth, it may take a couple of big events, a couple of big majors to kind of be in contention and learn how to handle himself before he's able to win one. But but that said, he is an impressive player, and he is one of those guys. He's not good news for if you're an American and fan of watching the Ryder Cup and pulling for the USA. That's for certain. He's a guy who looks like he's gonna be representing Europe as a Spaniard for a long time to come in those matches.
Yeah, a couple of Spaniards here at the top of the leaderboard. Jon Rahm at -1 through 10 and Sergio Garcia at -1 through 12. Well, we're talking with Gil Capps about all the current golfers, but of course there's a somber cloud over Augusta this year as well about someone who's not there. And I know they did a ceremonial program this morning, as they always do to start off the Masters, but it had a little special meaning. Did you happen to catch what they did for Arnold Palmer, and what were your thoughts on that?
I certainly did. You can. It's hard to boil down, the importance of people to just, one or two for anything as big as the Masters has become. But I don't think I would get a big argument from anybody. There are two people who made the Masters. The first is obviously Bobby Jones, which, if you're just a casual sports fan and don't know much about Bobby Jones, just take the time to Google him and read a little bit about him, because this man was like Tom Brady, LeBron James, you throw in a couple other big stars of the day, all rolled into one. He was that big in the United States in the 1920s and in the early 30s, and he single-handedly, not for him, there would be no Augusta National Golf Club and be no Masters. And that the tournament grew from his stature and the stature that sports writers at that time held him in. I mean, it was, when the Masters started, it was automatically one of the biggest golf tournaments in the world because it was Bobby Jones' tournament. And then fast forward, some 30 plus years to when Arnold Palmer shows up. and wins in 1958, 60, 62, and 64, at the same time that television became, a part of almost everybody's lives in their living room, and the Masters was first broadcast in 1956. And there's the charismatic Arnold Palmer who as I said, every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to be with. He was like that at that time, and he made golf. He took it to the masses, and he took that Masters tournament, which he was winning 4 times in that span. That all of a sudden the Masters became even more important. And then obviously that tradition goes on, obviously, with things Nicklaus did and Woods did, et cetera. But his importance to this event in particular cannot be understated, and to have this being the first playing without him there obviously brings a little tear to everyone's eye.
Gil Capps, author of The Magnificent Masters, Golf Channel, NBC Sports, and, of course, the Masters underway. You can watch the Masters and follow the leaderboard on our website, 973ESPN.com. Gil, we hope to catch up later on at the end of this tournament and pick your brain on how it all went down.
Mike, Pete, as always, great talking to you, and enjoy watching the golf here the next few days.